Jesus as Yahweh. Why don't you prove that I am not a scholar and debate me on the subject and prove me wrong?
Okay, so this whole thing started back in, I believe, 2016, where Ehrman just, I don't know, destroyed James White's credibility. Ehrman just ripped James White apart to the point where James White developed some kind of obsession, some kind of strange, creepy obsession with Bart Ehrman to the point of, like, I don't know, like like James White has an unhealthy obsession with Bart Ehrman, to the point where, it's both hilarious and sad just how obsessed James White is with Bart Ehrman. He is literally obsessed with him to a very creepy point where he's literally stalking him on the internet. Like, James White is stalking Bart Ehrman on the internet, and he's literally obsessed with Bart Ehrman to almost to a very creepy and illegal way. But anyways, Ehrman rejected this debate challenge that James White wanted, because as Ehrman rightly says, that James White is not a scholar on anything. So why is Ehrman going to waste his time with a fundamentalist hack, or a crazy Christian like James White? Why is Bart Ehrman going to waste his time dealing with a crazy old man like James White? You see, so real scholars do not take James White seriously. Well, like Bart Ehrman and all those scholars don't take him seriously. I think the only people who take James White seriously are Muslim, like, college kids. Like, I never took James White seriously. I take Bart Ehrman seriously. I take Richard Carrier seriously because they have PhDs in respective fields. But this old man, this clown James White, I don't take him seriously. I don't think anybody should take him seriously, because he just does not know what he's talking about. And real scholars like Ehrman just make fun of James White left and right. But anyways, so Ehrman is just basically rejecting James White's challenge, not because James White has good points. He doesn't. I mean, there was a point where James White debated a 20-year-old Muslim college kid named Sami Zaatari. Now look at this. Look how crazy James White is. He's a man in his 50s debating a 20-year-old. You see how, like, crazy he is? But anyways, Sami Zaatari, this 20-year-old kid, completely refuted and won the debate against James White. So, James White is so desperate for attention, he's debating Muslim college kids to show how important he is in biblical scholarship. But he's not a scholar. James White is not a scholar on anything. Like, nobody should take him seriously. Like, there are other Christian scholars who are a lot better. Like, William Lane Craig is a lot better than James White. Hell, even Michael Licona is better than James White. Like, there's so many other Christian apologists who are much more better than James White. But anyways, this just shows that White is, like, no serious scholar has taken James White seriously. He's basically ignored in the field of biblical studies. So this just goes to show you that James White is literally begging Ehrman for another debate because he lost so badly in the first one. But Ehrman is just rejecting White's advances, or is just ignoring James White, James White's James White's attempts for debate, because James White is basically begging Bart Ehrman for another debate, but Ehrman's just ignoring him because, James White isn't worth any real scholar's time. Ehrman has better things to do with his time than to waste it with a crazy old man like James White. This shows you just how, I don't know, just how unimportant James White is and how desperate he is for relevance or attention. So, this just shows you that, James White is desperate for being relevant, but he's not relevant, to academic biblical studies. James White is only important to Muslim college kids. I think that's the only, and maybe some Calvinists, but that's who takes him seriously, right? So we Muslims shouldn't take him seriously. We should look up real apologists, real Christian apologists, like William Lane Craig, etc., Frank Turek, Michael Licona. These Christian apologists are way better than James White, and they have more qualifications than James White. So this just shows just how irrelevant James White is and how he's basically faded to nothing. Now he's just a crazy, Christian blogger in his basement. That's basically what James White is. And he's basically begging Bart Ehrman for a debate, like you've seen. And Ehrman's just ignoring him. Everyone's just ignoring James White. Now, that just shows just how irrelevant he is and just how unimportant he is in the field of apologetics. I think David Wood is more of a threat to Islam than James White ever was. But this just shows you just how desperate James White is for attention, and how like no real scholar is giving him what he craves, attention. He is just a sad old man in a basement being a blogger and being a podcaster. That's all he is. That's all he ever will be. James White will never be a scholar. He's just a big joke, and nobody really takes him seriously in the field of biblical studies. So please, just do not show any respect to James White, and don't be fooled by his stupidity. There are other Christian apologists out there who are way better and way more qualified than James White. So this just shows you just how desperate he is. How he's basically begging Bart Ehrman for another debate, and how Ehrman is just laughing at him and mocking him, or just laughing at him and just flat out ignoring him, and pumping high quality academic books on the New Testament, on the Bible, while James White's just a jealous old man in his basement obsessing over Bart Ehrman, because we all know who the real scholar is here. We all know who the real biblical scholar is. It's Bart Ehrman, not the crazy James White. Stay tuned, more videos coming up ahead.